we're very fortunate and lucky today to have Barry Steiner speak to us about some interesting parts of his career. Barry went to the university, he grew up in Providence, Rhode Island, and went to the University of Rhode Island, graduating in '68 and going right into OCS down in Pensacola at that point. I told Barry I wouldn't do his whole presentation for him, but I just want to point out a couple of aspects. He flew T-34s, of course, in basic, and then S-2s and P-3s in his Navy career. After the Navy, he became a pilot at Delta Airlines, flew there for, I guess, 29, 30 years, and a couple of years flying the Gulfstream 4, and then spent many years after that as a teacher, training new pilots in all Boeing airplanes. So, with that sort of brief thing, I want to welcome Barry up here. Appreciate very much your coming and speaking to us today.
Thanks, Pat. You good? Thanks, Pat.
Okay. Good morning, old bold pilots. How are you? From the feedback I hear, I think you folks in the back can hear me okay. Sounds good. In full disclosure, there was a little bit of information lost in translation when we set up the talk I'm going to give you today and when the emails went out. So we probably saw a couple of different topics. But what we have here today is an incident that I'm going to talk about that happened to me several years ago in San Francisco on a 757. Now, before I get into that, I thought it might be fun to take a look at some of the airplanes that I really had the good fortune to fly leading up to this incident. And then I'll talk you through what happened from a bird's eye view in the cockpit. And then after that, I'll talk a little bit about what happened in the rest of my flying days after that happened. After that, I'll open up for questions, and hopefully I'll be able to come up with some answers for you. So, my flying career started, as Pat said, in 1968. It was actually November 5th, 1968, when I reported to Pensacola for Naval Aviation Officer Candidate School, AOCS. And it's kind of curious that when I showed up for training, I had 0 time in the cockpit of airplanes. I was a 0 time guy. In fact, the flight that I had flying down to Pensacola was only the second time I'd even traveled by air as a passenger. So it was kind of an interesting proposition for me to get used to. T-34B, Mentor, first airplane that I got to fly. I think at the time frame that I went through, all Navy and Marine Corps and Coast Guard pilots started off on the T-34. Kind of curious, how many former naval aviators do we have in the room? Oh, okay, great. Any P3 drivers? I guess I'm the only one, okay. How about airline guys? How many airline guys do we have? Quite a few, great. And the last question I was curious about, just to give you a feel for what you guys have for experiences, how many of you guys get to fly the Boeing 757, 767? Okay, we get a sprinkling, that's good. I went through AOCS. They kind of tried to change the program a little bit when I went in there. I don't know if any of you have saw the Richard Gere movie, Officer and Gentleman, where it shows him going through AOCS. Well, that was kind of what it was like, except without the drama. We had the good fortune to spend a lot of time under the close supervision of Marine Corps drill instructors. It was kind of an eye-opening experience for me. And oddly enough, for some reason, a month after I checked in, I reported to Salfie Field to fly the T-34. And as luck would have it, they put me in the group with all the Marine pilots. So I was actually Marine trained all the way through primary flight training. I don't know if that's a good or bad thing, but I'm still here to talk about it, so it can't be that bad. T-34 was a great little airplane. If we have any Bonanza guys in the room, it's very similar to that. Same engine and a little different operating characteristics. I got to learn how to fly straight and level first, and then after that we get into how to take off and land, and then about a month after I started, I got to solo on the airplane, which was kind of a neat experience. And then after that, they had a program where we learned to do precision acrobatics as a confidence builder, and it was a lot of fun. Got to do all sorts of acrobatics like loops, rolls, split S's, wing overs, half Cuban eights. It was a real good experience, and I also got to do a lot of stalls and full spins in the airplane, which was really kind of cool. I enjoyed flying that. After I finished flying the T-34, I went back to OCS and finished that up. And as I got my commission as an ensign, I went to Milton, Florida to BT-3 and flew the T-28 Bravo, which was a monster airplane to me at the time. I'll never forget walking up to that in the ramp and looking up at it and said, holy cow, that's a mighty big airplane. So I started flying that with a grand total of about 24 hours of time before I strapped that on. And the syllabus that we went through there was transition to the airplane, and then we get an introduction to instrument flying, and then get to do formation flying, which was a lot of fun too. We did two ship formations, and four ship formation flying was a lot of fun. You notice the back of the tail here is pretty clean. But after I completed T-28B training, I moved over to the T-28C, the Charlie model. And you notice that we have a little bit of a thing hanging out the back of the airplane, a little tail hook. And what I did on the airplane was doing FCOPs at Barron Field in Foley, Alabama. It was actually kind of like the dawn patrol. We would go out to Foley every morning in the middle of the night, so we could get our airplanes ready, pre-flighted, started up, and taxi out to hold short, waiting for official dawn so we could launch to get the smooth air for the field carrier landing practice that we did in that airplane. I did about 60 or 70 FCOPs in that, and then we flew a gaggle of T-28s over to the east coast of Florida to Patrick Air Force Base, and joined up with the USS Constitution, CVA 62. And that was my first carrier qualification exercise on that little runway there on the back end of the boat. That was kind of a fun experience. As short as that runway looks, there for landing, what you don't appreciate is we deck launched on that after arrested landings. We arrested here, then just taxied over here, and then deck launched off this part of the forward part of the ship, which was kind of an exciting proposition. After I finished my carrier qualification, my initial qualifications on the Independence, I moved over to Corpus Christi, Texas for advanced multi-engine training on the TS-2A, which is a fun airplane. We did a transition into that, and then did a lengthy instrument training on that. So much so that after I completed the instrument training, they had a deal set up with a local FISDO where we'd go over there and take a military equivalency test, and they would give us I ended up with a commercial multi-engine land instrument rating, which was my first FAA license. It would be another 18 years before I got my first type rating on that. Well, after the instrument training, we did some operational flying out at low altitude, flying over the water with sonobuoys, and then got back into the FCLP business, and ended up flying approaches to the CBT-16 Lexington. Lexington's an old carrier. It's almost a straight deck, and it's the only carrier that I know of that has wooden deck in modern times. After the carry call phase, I completed the flight training, got my Navy wings, and caught some temporary duty as a flight instructor. I went back to Pensacola, Salford Field, and went through instructor training there. And then there were about 30 of us, and we grabbed a bunch of airplanes and flew them from Pensacola back to Corpus Christi and set up a mini detachment for the Naval ROTC program. We take the students that were on their juniors and senior years, I think, or sophomore and junior years, and we give them some aviation indoctrination. And it was great for us as instructors because it let us build up some time. We fly about 3 flights a day, and it was fun flying. An interesting thing that happened to me while we were down there, this program was supposed to go from, I think, May through September for the ROTC students. My first son was born on July 30th at the Naval Hospital in Corpus Christi. And then a couple days later, Kelly found this great graphic that I'm going to show you here that I had never seen before. But on the night of August 2nd and all day of August 3rd, Hurricane Cecile came through Corpus Christi. And as luck would have it, the Corpus Christi is right here, and the naval station's right here, and my apartment was right here. So, needless to say, our operation shut down pretty quickly after that. The only thing I noticed on the slide, they only have 175 miles an hour winds here. But while I was down there on the local TV and radio stations, they were reporting wind gusts from 180 to 200 miles an hour right through the city of Corpus Christi. It was quite an experience. So, that being over with, I went to Naval Air Station Southway, Massachusetts, as a station pilot for a couple of years. And then finally I got my first fleet assignment on the P3 Orion. Actually, the original Orion is the P3A Orion, although this picture is actually of a P3C, which was a follow-on version after I got out. However, that is one of my squadron airplanes, so they did eventually transition to the newer airplane. I flew the P3 out of Naval Air Station Brunswick, Maine, and we did deployments to places like Bermuda, which was pretty good duty. I was there for about 6 months. And then we also did deployments to Keflavik, Iceland, Lodges in the Azores, Rota, Spain, and Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. So it was pretty interesting. While I was flying in that airplane, I had the good fortune to be able to fire a bullpup missile off of the wing pod on that airplane, which was quite a unique experience. It was remotely controlled by a little joystick we put on the right armrest of the co-pilot seat, and once you fired the missile, it had smokes on the end of the tails, and you just visually guided the missile to the target. And I actually sank a little remote controlled target boat with it. It was kind of fun. So, this is what it looked like on the inside. Lately, the P3 is getting a lot of TV coverage. They use it extensively. Australian Air Force used it to look for that MH370 that got lost over the Indian Ocean. But that's what it looked like when I was flying it. Good airplane, good solid airplane. I enjoyed working on that. Well, after I got out of the Navy, I was lucky enough to pick up a job at Delta Airlines. Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah. Last year in the Navy, I volunteered for some additional duty on the USS Clamagore, SS-343. I came to find out it was the last operational submarine in the U.S. Navy, the last operational diesel submarine in the U.S. Navy. And because of an incident that happened when I was on board, it turned out to be its last cruise. They mothballed it after we get back to New London, Connecticut. And right now it's on static display in Charleston, South Carolina. I'm hoping to get the opportunity to go over there and get on board, take some pictures, and come back and give you a talk about my experience on the Clamagore. If you look at the if you look in the aft section of the boat back here, we can kind of get an indication of what the problem was when I was on board the submarine. It's one of my little tokens that I got, my little memorabilia that the skipper of the submarine gave me. I really treasure that little card that I've got. It's kind of interesting, on board the submarine, I was on board for 8 days and stood watches around the clock, 4 hours on, 4 hours off. And that's how they operated the submarine. That's how everybody worked on there. It was an interesting experience. Then, after I got out of the Navy, I started with Delta Airlines on the 727. And I spent 2 years on the engineer panel back here and 7 years in the co-pilot seat over there. Probably reached the peak of my manual flying skills flying that airplane because it demanded a lot of attention and there wasn't a whole lot of automation on it. So it was a really solid airplane. We called it the Studebaker. That's because it's been around for quite a while. But I thoroughly enjoyed my experience on the 7.2. After that, I get the opportunity to check out as a co-pilot on the 757, 767 fleet. The FAA approved a common type rating for these two airplanes for the airlines to save money on training. And consequently, we get to fly those two airplanes at the same time, interchangeably, during the same day. We switched from one to the other, even though one was a narrow body, single aisle, and the other one was a wide body, twin aisle airplane. The cockpits were very similar. Finally, after, 11 years with the airline and 9 years with the Navy, and about 9,000 hours, I got my first captain job on the 737, which I flew mostly out of Salt Lake City. Great little airplane. I learned a lot about mountain flying out of Salt Lake City up in Montana, Wyoming. Very different kind of flying than we see in the flatlands, I'll tell you that. Very challenging, but very exciting. After I'd flown it for a couple of years, I got approached to become a line check airman on it. So I accepted and I went back for line check training. What that means as a line check pilot, I had two duties. I would ride jump seat and give check rides to line crews who required them every 6 months. And then the part that I liked even better was I get to check out new pilots on the airplane. New pilots would go through flight training back in Atlanta in the flight simulators, and they pass all the requirements of the flight simulators, and then they come out and fly with a line check pilot on the airplane with a load of passengers. And in some cases, it was their first time ever in the airplane. So I kept me on my toes, and I get to fly on both left and right seats. If I was checking out a new captain, I'd fly in the right seat. And if I was checking out a new co-pilot, I'd fly in the left seat. It was very enjoyable flying. I did that for 9 years out of Salt Lake City. I lived up in Park City during that time. And then I picked up a bid on the 757, 767 fleet in Los Angeles. That's the 757. It's a narrow body airplane with a single aisle. And you can notice that if you see these on approach from the airport, you can't tell which one it is. Just look at the wheels. On the 757, the trucks tilt up. On the 767, the trucks tilt down. In fact, the other difference is because of the difference in the size of the two airplanes, I think on the, I always get mixed up. I'd always trip walking into the cockpit. On one of them, you stepped up into the cockpit, and the other one, you stepped down. I can't remember which was which. What's that? Yeah, that's right, yeah. So these two airplanes, we call them the electronic twins. They were Boeing's first foray into the world of fly-by-wire. They just kind of stuck their toe in the water to see how it was, and resulting in the two airplanes having fly-by-wire controls on the spoilers and also on the engine controls. They were FADEC engines, and I think some of you probably know what FADEC is. I think it's a full authority, either full authority engine control in some cases, or full authority electronic control. And how that works is there's no connection from the thrust levers to the engines. It's all electronic signals going out to a computer that's out sitting on the engine accessory section with a little box called an EEC, electronic engine control, which is a multi-channel fuel control, basically, with multiple backups systems to make sure it adjusts the flow correctly for different power settings. And I'll get into that a little bit later during my talk. That's the 767. You can see the trucks are pointing down. The short 767, I flew 4 versions of the 767, only one of the 75. But the 4 versions we had here, the short one was 76200, which is the first one that was delivered by Boeing back when they actually thought they were going to have a flight engineer in the airplane. So when you walk into the cockpit of the original 767, there was a huge empty space in the back of the cockpit where the flight engineer was supposed to be. So the next picture I have here, Kelly was the magician on the computer. Kelly put this together for me. It shows the center console in the cockpit and a bird's eye view of the pedestal section, which sits right over here. So I could talk a little bit about what happened to me in San Francisco. This was December 7th, the year 2000. I was flying a 3-day trip with a brand new co-pilot who was getting his initial qualification on the airplane. We laid over in Boston and then Las Vegas and then came to Salt Lake City. And then the last leg of the trip was from San Francisco to Los Angeles. So I could sign Paul off and let him go on his merry way and fly regular trips with regular captains. He was a really nice guy. I enjoyed flying with him. The topic of my talk, as you recall, was anticipating the unexpected. And this is where this comes into play. As a pilot, after years of flying and years of having weird things happen to me, I get a little on the defensive side, and I always knew there were things that might happen if I wasn't aware of what the possible outcomes of the flying operation would be. So my whole goal as a professional pilot was to think as far ahead as the airplane as I could to anticipate what could possibly ever go wrong, so that when it did go wrong, I wasn't surprised. On this particular occasion, we met our flight attendant crew. It was a crew of Orlando-based flight attendants, 6 flight attendants, and one of the important jobs as captain was when I met a new flight attendant crew, and we changed flight attendant crews sometimes 2 or 3 times a day, but it was really important to set the tone with the flight attendants, to let them know that we were working together as a team, open up communications, and make sure that we work together well. It's what we called it in the airline business was crew resource management. Crew resource management was not just up in the cockpit, but it extended all the way from the nose of the airplane to the tail of the airplane, and outside the airplane too, with the FAA and with the company dispatch and flight control people. So when I met the flight attendant crew, I always made it a point to introduce myself and my co-pilot and give them the basic information about the flight, about time en route, cruise altitude. I gave them the Los Angeles weather on this evening. And I always told them, look, guys, please let me know before it gets too hot or too cold in the cabin so I can keep you guys comfortable. And if anything ever happens back there that's out of the ordinary, I want to be the second person that knows about it, so I can come up with a plan to back you up and help you out with whatever's going on. It gave them a chance to kind of get a read on me, and it gave me a chance to get a kind of a thin slice read on the abilities of the flight attendant crew I was dealing with. I talked to the flight attendant in charge, which is a guy named John, and I said, John, look, just on the off chance that we have an aborted takeoff, what I'd like you to do is wait till the airplane comes to a complete stop, then come up to the cockpit, have a seat on the jump seat behind me, and we'll deal with it face to face, just so nothing gets lost in translation. It's worked for me in the past, and I think it would work good in the future too. And that really paid off a lot of dividends for me in this particular case. Let me give you a little rundown on the 757 cockpit here, because this is kind of interesting. These two screens up here are called the ICAS. I'm sure different airplanes have different names for them, but what it is the engine indication and crew alerting system. And you notice it's got the typical engine indications over here on the right side here and on the lower screen. Over here it's got digital readouts of messages that are related to any malfunctions or non-normal situations in the cockpit. Anytime a discrete light comes on anywhere in the overhead or any place else in the cockpit, it's presented digitally on the ICAS. And it's broken down into tiers. If we had the most significant message would be a time-critical warning message, which always would come at the top of the ICAS screen. It would be red, and it was always associated with an oral warning. For instance, if you got an engine fire, the indication of engine fire would be one of these two fire switches would illuminate bright red. The fire bell would go off, and then you'd have a message up here that says fire engine right, fire engine left, whatever the problem is. Same thing for any of the electrical problems that could happen. They're always spelled out on the ICAS. The second priority were these amber colored messages, which were caution messages. They were tied to checklists that we had for each situation that might happen that we'd have to go through on the pilot quick reference handbook and deal with. And then you can see indented below those are some more amber messages. Those are advisory messages only and not connected to a checklist at all. And then the last priority that we had was called status messages. Status messages would appear on the lower screen here. The screen would blank, and they were white messages, and they were only affecting the dispatch capability of the airplane, the dispatch reliability. So what happened was we got signed off by the gate agent. He closed the door, and we started up the engines and taxied out to runway 1 left in San Francisco, just a normal evening. As we approached the runway, the tower said, Delta 1877, we have extensive flow control delays into Los Angeles. Taxi across the runway, park on the east side of the field, and stand by. So I said, okay, we'll do that, but when we get over there, I'm going to shut down the engine, so I would appreciate a heads-up notification so we'd have time to get the motors restarted again. He said, fine, no problem. So we did exactly that. I coordinated with John, the flight attendant, and said, look, John, how do you feel about it if we open up the bar and comp the passengers for the delay? He said, sure, we can handle that. So I made an announcement to the folks, said drinks are on me, and everybody was happy. As time progressed, it got darker and darker. It was a pretty clear evening in San Francisco. Winds were pretty calm. We got notified by the tower that our time was coming up for release, so we'd be able to get out of there. I told John to get the cabin secured. He shut down the galleys, and we started up the engines again. The tower, I guess it was ground control at that time, clears over to the runway, the approach end, the departure end, and tower clears into a position and hold. Line up and wait is what they call it these days. We set ourselves up on the runway. I was really excited. This was going to be my co-pilot, Paul's last leg, and he'd get it all signed off and qualified. And I was going to get home and catch the last SkyWest flight out of LA to get back home here to Palm Springs. So life was good. Then that's when things started happening. We got cleared for takeoff. I said, okay, Paul, you're a plane. He pushes the thrust levers up to spool up the engines. It releases the brakes. We started rolling down the runway, and just as soon as we started rolling, I saw a status message pop up on the ICAS. Well, being a curious fellow, I pushed a little button here and brought the status message up here, and I saw some abbreviations that I had never seen before. And I said, I was looking at it, and there was 4 groups of letters that said RT space ENG space PRI space CON. And I'm thinking about that. I've never seen this before. I had no idea what it was. And it said, right engine primary control is what I figured it meant. So I said, kind of out loud, I said, I wonder what that means. Paul was flying the airplane, says, well, Barry, I think it means the right engine just quit. Sure enough, I looked up, and the engine instruments started unwinding, and then all of a sudden the ICAS, which is normally black for takeoff because there should be no malfunctions, all of a sudden it lit up kind of like what it looks like right now. So I said, oh darn, this is going to mess up the evening. I wasn't too excited about it. By this time in my flying career, I had several aborted takeoffs, which they now call rejected takeoffs in Boeing speak. So I said, okay, we'll have to abort. I said, okay, so we transferred the control of the airplane. I took over control because the Capt was required to do all the aborted takeoffs. And Paul, being the sharp co-pilot he was, just grabbed the mic, called the tower, told them we were boarding, switched over to the public address system and made announcements to the passengers, told them we were just discontinuing the takeoff and to remain seated, and then we'd be back with more information. So far, so good. We never got above probably the most 40 or 50 knots was the fastest we got. It was a really non-event kind of an aborted takeoff. But as we were rolling to a stop, that's when even more things started happening. I monitor the cabin interphones and system, and I got a call from one of the flight attendants in the cabin, and she said, fire, 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 co-pilot side. And I thought, well, that's odd. I don't have any fire indication up here. And I'm thinking, in time, when things like this happen, your brain speeds up to a point where time slows down. And that's exactly what happened in this situation. Time was, even though things were happening quickly, in my head, in my mind, it was like in slow motion. Because there were I was getting multiple inputs at the time. So I'm thinking, okay, she's saying fire. I wonder if it's really a fire or just smoke coming out of the engine, which has happened in the past. Not to me, but I knew one particular instance where Elton 11 TriStar was taxiing out of Atlanta, and they delayed the start of the right engine until they get near the runway. And on the TriStar, which is a triple spool engine, it puts out a lot of smoke when it starts up. They had a new flight attendant in the back of the airplane who saw all the smoke come out of the airplane, and she commanded an evacuation of the airplane to the back of the cabin. The poor guys in the front didn't know what was going on until the tower said, hey Delta, do you know your doors are open, your slides are out? So that was in the back of my mind when she made the call, because I had no indications in the cockpit of a fire. But then, it's taken me a long time to get to this point, but it was probably just a matter of seconds between when she called me on the interphone, and then the tower came up on the radio and said, hey Delta, your right engine's on fire. Now I have verified information from independent sources, and I'm starting to become a believer that yes, I do have a fire on the engine, even though I have no fire indications in the cockpit. I said, okay, well I do have a fire, so we'll have to deal with it. By this time, the airplane stopped, the APU was running, so I shut down both engines, and I went through the initial action items for engine fire, which simply, at this point, was just turning off the fuel control switches. Here's the right fuel control switch right here. And then pulling the fire handle, which is right here, the right fire handle, left, right. Well, the way this airplane is designed, the only way you can pull the fire handle is if there's a fire enunciated in it. Otherwise, it won't pull up unless you reach underneath of the handle and push a disconnect button to unlock the handle so that you can pull it up. And that's the case that happened in this particular instance. This is not something we train for in flight training. Not at Delta and also not at Boeing. It's just not something that comes up in training. You learn about it when you study the systems. You know that that override system's there, but for most guys, they've never ever had the opportunity to press that button. Anyway, to make a long story a little bit shorter, I pulled the handle, which isolates the engine from fuel, oil, hydraulic, electricity, all that kind of stuff. And then the procedures say that if the engine fire warning is still displayed, fire the bottle. Well, I never got one of those, so I said, the heck with it, I don't know what I'm dealing with. I just fired the first fire bottle. Then I got on the PA, I made an announcement to the passengers, and I said, folks, hey, we're aware of the fact that we have smoke coming out of the right engine, and that we're dealing with it on board, and the crash crew is on the way. The crew's on the way because I think the tower dispatched it as soon as they called me, but I had Paul call and ask him to roll the equipment anyway as we're coming to a stop. But I did want to get an announcement out to the passengers so that we knew what was going on and we were dealing with it. The next thing I did was, I still don't know what's going on out there. John, the flight attendant, had already come off the cabin. He was sitting directly behind me on the jump seat, talking to the flight attendants through our cabin interphone system. And I decided, the heck with that, I don't know what's going on out there, so I fired the second fire bottle out there just to be doubly sure, because I don't have any feedback at all about the status of the fire. Normally, if you had a fire indication and the fire was extinguished with the extinguisher, the light would go off, the bell would start ringing, and everything would be good. So I figured we're not going anywhere tonight, so I might as well fire both bottles. At that point, John, the flight attendant, said, I asked him, John, how's everything going in the cabin? Because in the back of my mind, when something like this happens, I'm thinking about evacuation, passenger evacuation, which is something I prefer not to do, because I know that for a fact, if I ever command a passenger evacuation, people are going to get injured. So unless it's absolutely required, it's not something that I want to do. I said, John, what's going on back there? He says, well, they tell me that the passengers sitting by the right wing were really freaking out because they said that the fireball was so huge that they could feel the heat through the cabin wall and they were starting to panic. But the cabin crew wisely relocated those few rows of passengers to somewhere else in the cabin to get them away from that threat. So the cabin was pretty much calming at this point because I made a couple of more announcements telling the people that the crash crew was approaching the airplane, inspecting the engine, and that we used our onboard extinguishing equipment to put out the fire, and that the people on the ground were just examining the engine to check for any other problems. And that was very important, keeping the people informed, I think, because once they were informed and they knew that I knew what was going on, they felt more comfortable that the situation was in hand, and it worked out pretty well for us. The fire chief told me that everything looked good on the outside. I asked Paul, my co-pilot, to call the operations, the Delta Air operations office and tell them what was going on and have them send out a tow tractor for us. They'd already done that. The tractor was halfway to the airplane by that time, and they towed us back to the gate. It was kind of interesting. As we were taxiing back to the gate, apparently there were some film crews in the terminal that were filming a documentary, and when they heard what happened, when we got to the gate, the glass wall of the gate was just lined up with cameras, cameras and lights as we taxied into the gate. And then I found out, as we had flown, as this had happened to us on the runway, one of the local TV stations, a traffic copter, had been flying over the field and had photographed the entire episode. I never saw the film, but a friend of mine said he saw it on CNN once, and I guess it wasn't that important because nobody was injured, so they didn't play it anymore, so I never did get to see it. But Paul, my co-pilot, told me as we were debriefing each other down in operations after this happened, he said, you know, Barry, it's pretty dark out for takeoff. But when we stopped and I looked out my window on the right-hand side, it looked like daytime out there. That's how big the firewall was that came off the engine. So I'm glad that we got that extinguished and nobody got hurt and everybody was safe. I arranged for our command center in Atlanta to set up hotel rooms for us in the airport Hilton, and they gave us positive space tickets home to our respective bases, and all was well in the world. But I think a lot of that final turnout was because of the anticipation of what could possibly go wrong and be just a step ahead of it when it does. And it paid out big dividends for us on that evening in San Francisco. I flew the 7576 for 5 more years and then transitioned to my retirement airplane, which is the 767-400. The Dash 400 is size-wise in between a stretch 767 and a 777. It was actually a test bed for the 777, and some of the systems that they put in the 777, they tried out on this airplane first. It was kind of neat. I enjoyed flying it. Delta, at the time when I flew it, used it exclusively for flying to Hawaii. So I would fly to Honolulu and Maui about 4 times a month. It was really good. It was probably the best flying I ever did. I really enjoyed it. The airplane was really solid. And on the inside, the cabin was very comfortable. And in this picture, actually, I just noticed, it's a very similar. Boeing uses a lot of the same parts in different airplanes to save money, so they don't have to redesign everything, so it has the same fire switches. And there's the little buttons underneath the fire switches that I had to push to get the handle to come up to isolate that engine when we had that fire on it. Very comfortable cockpit. The long flights flew to Hawaii from not only Los Angeles but also San Francisco, Cincinnati, in Atlanta as well. The Atlanta-Honolulu flight was a pretty long flight. It was over 10 hours non-stop. We usually carried a relief pilot on that flight. So, here's the before and after picture that Kelly so graciously put together for me. That's what I on the left side is what I looked like when I started in 1977 with Delta Airlines, and on the right side in that 767-400 is what I looked like just before I retired at the end of 2005. After my Delta flying, I took off a couple months for rest and relaxation, and then went down to Dallas-Fort Worth and got myself a typewriting on a Gulfstream G4, and tried my hand at charter flying for a year with 3 135 operators in the Los Angeles area. I got to tell you, if you get a fly, that's the only way to travel. It's very, very lush, very comfortable, and every G4 is different on the inside. As far as I can tell, the ones that I flew, each one was distinctive and different setup. They were all customized. After a year of doing that, I heard that Boeing was looking for instructors on the 777, and with an eye towards building up a cadre of instructors to launch the 787. So I said, sign me up, I'm all over that. I went up to Seattle, got type rated on the 777 and started instructing in that. Great airplane, I really enjoyed it. Here's what the cockpit looks like. It looks a lot like that 767-400 that I showed in the previous slide, but it's got a lot more bells and whistles on it. I really love that airplane. After, I think it was 2 years, I got checked out on the 787. I was in the original cadre of 787 instructors and line assist pilots. I'm probably number 50 or 60 in the number of checkouts. I never did find out where I stood in that. That's what it looks like in the cockpit, and it looks like it's on an assembly line in one of the hangars, either up in Everett or in Washington, or possibly in Charleston, down in South Carolina, where they got 2 assembly lines. It's kind of cool airplane, a lot of digital stuff. 2 HUDs, which was my first experience with heads-up display. Enjoyed that. A lot of technology went into it. You can see we have the EFBs permanently installed in the airplane. We also had these while I was teaching on the 777. They installed those on the 777 as well. What was really kind of neat is looking through that HUD while you're flying. It's a unique experience, and once you get used to it, you get real dependent on it, and you become what they call a HUD cripple, because once you get used to flying to a HUD, you can't get used to looking down at the instruments anymore. It's a whole different world. This is an interesting letter. I just thought I'd put up there for you. Since I did get checked out on that airplane, I actually got qualified on the 787 before they ever qualified the first simulator. So I had never been inside the flight simulator for the 787. And this letter from the FAA says that I'm designated as the pilot in command on the 787. And as soon as the airplane is certified, I'll send me my type rating on it. So I was certified before the airplane was, actually before the simulator was too. So it's not a letter from the FAA you see all that often. So, does that look familiar to anybody? Back in 1968, that's very similar to the link trainer that I started out in the T-34, learning procedures and instrument scans. And then about 40 years later, that's what I ended up working in at Boeing. It was the 787 simulator. It's a little bit bigger than that link trainer. As you can see, this is the 2nd story entrance to the simulator. It's a 4-story building. Once the door closes of that simulator and the boarding gate goes up, which you can see right here, there's virtually no difference between that simulator and the airplane, except you can't get a cup of coffee in the simulator. That's what it looks like from the inside of the simulator. The instructor station where I worked was right here. And I called it the Captain Kirk chair because you had screens on both sides and you were punching things. You were like a maestro at the piano playing that thing during the exercises with the trainees up in front of the airplane. Really is a nice setup. Ted is a full-time Boeing guy. This is a stock Boeing photo. Ted Shropshire is a TCE at Boeing. He's a training center evaluator on a bunch of Boeing airplanes. And he and I went through recurrent training about 2 or 3 years ago together on the 777 and the 787. Nice guy, good pilot. So, that's the program.